Hi, I'm Joseph Haber from Flying Tortoise Kung Fu in Portland, Oregon. In the second video on Sanda Basics, we are going to take a look at striking. As I mentioned in my previous video, Sanda is a modern form of Kung Fu, and one well known to borrow extensively from fighting styles both Eastern and Western. As such, when I started practice, I expected to learn hand techniques more akin to Western boxing than the Fa-Li internal mechanics of my Bagua and Pao Chui pedigree. During my first weeks of training, this assumption was completely rebuked. My Shifu, former Chinese Special Forces operator Ma Guohong, certainly borrows concepts and combinations from non-native styles, but his ideas on power generation are pure classical Chinese. My work with Ma Shifu rapidly became one of the most fascinating studies of my time in Tiantan, as I learned to mold my traditional training into something distinctly freeform. My first dive into Sanda striking was a direct follow-up to our basic footwork drills. The Mabu or horse dance integrated a simple corkscrew punch for distancing work, and the backward shuffle added a jab, which helped build timing and coordination between the punching hand and the rooted foot. This sort of timing is vital for proper power generation, as full body power must be grounded, even if that root is only present for the split-second transition between successive steps. Following our timing and distancing drills, Ma Shifu introduced his first distinctly Sanda hand technique. This spinning forearm move, though fairly simple looking, proved a challenging foyer into Sanda striking. I found the strike particularly challenging as it was my first exposure in Sanda to a blind turn towards a target out of the backward shuffle. The power generation for the strike was also quite complex. In order to make the strike anything but a gentle love tap, the movement has to originate from the low back and hips. This requires a well-rooted low stance and a flexible spine, along with a decent understanding of internal striking mechanics. Putting all these pieces together was challenging, and it took me several days to get comfortable with the technique. From here, Ma Shifu and I went on to explore a wide range of hand techniques, starting with impact training. In the Temple of Heaven, the impact training tool of choice are trees. Over years of observation, I have come to the conclusion that this is because trees are much harder than most people, and they rarely ever complain.
Wow.
Impact training and basic hand movements evolved into mechanically simple combinations, such as this boxing drill and other flow exercises. Once I had a handle on the basic aesthetic of Ma Shifu Sanda, we moved on to more complex coiling strikes. Much like the spinning forearm strike, this movement seems quite simple. However, in order to be effective, it relies heavily on complex internal low back and hip coordination. It was movements such as this that really bridged the gap between internal Kung Fu theory and effective sparring that turned me on to Sanda. Thank you so much for watching. Please check back next week for a look at some Sanda hand and foot combinations, as well as a look at some Sanda kicks. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, please drop me a like, and be sure to subscribe for more content on Tiantan Kung Fu.